If you have been struggling to conduct a Spearman rank correlation in Stata or a Pearson correlation in Stata, this video is for you. In this video, I will show you step-by-step approach on how you can carry out a Spearman rank correlation in Stata or a Pearson correlation in Stata. I will also show you when you can use a Spearman rank correlation and when you can use a Pearson correlation based on the assumption. Let's get started. Correlation will help us to establish a relationship between two variables at a point in time. Where you have your data set and you want to know the relationship between two variables, correlation will help you to do that. However, if you want to establish a causal effect between two variables, correlation cannot do that. Correlation tells you the relationship and the strength of that relationship, and not to establish a causal effect. There are so many types of correlation. However, this video will focus on two: the Pearson correlation and the Spearman rank correlation. Let me take some time to talk about the Pearson and the Spearman rank correlation. The Pearson correlation will, number one, help you to establish a relationship between two variables. Then number two, where your data comes from a normal distribution, the Pearson correlation is most appropriate, and also provided that your data or your observation is above 2000. However, if your data does not come from a normal distribution and your observation is less than 2000, then you will most likely want to use the Spearman rank correlation. Let's also remember that these things are garbage out, garbage in, garbage out. So it therefore means that it will give you a result even though your data does not come from a normal distribution and you're using the Pearson correlation. Result will come out, but your interpretation is spurious. Why? Because you have not met the basic assumptions for using that technique. So before you want to test for or carry out a relationship test between your variables, you want to know, are my data normally distributed or not? The first step to conducting correlation analysis in Stata is to load your data set. I have a video that shows you step-by-step approach on how you can load your data set into Stata. I will include the link to that video in the comment section. However, for this video, I have already uploaded my data set into Stata, as you can see. So these are my cross-sectional properties telling me that I have 16 companies in this my data set for 10 years from 2012 to 2021, and then I have two sectors, X and Y, and these are my variables. So my data has been pasted nicely into Stata and I am happy. The next thing is for me to conduct my correlation analysis. I would like to start with the Spearman rank correlation. The command for Spearman rank correlation is simply to type Spearman in your command bar, Spearman, and then you load your variables. You drop your variables. I'll drop Tobin Q, market capitalization, earnings per share, return on asset, and every other variable in my data set. After dropping all of them, you click enter. Your result will come up. Now this is my result, and I find that the relationship between Tobin Q and Tobin Q is 1, meaning that the relationship between a variable and itself is perfect. Ought to be 1, should be 1. However, the relationship between market capitalization and Tobin Q is positive, and it is less than 1. I have 57% here. So the relationship between earnings per share and Tobin Q is 42 and also positive. Then the relationship between return on asset and Tobin Q is also positive. However, the relationship between equity to total asset is negative. So if I'm interpreting my independent variables against my dependent variable, then all my variables have positive relationship except the equity to total asset, which has a negative relationship. However, where you want to suspect for multicollinearity, Then you can look at the relationship between the independent variables. So if the relationship is above 80, then you can start suspecting for multicollinearity. For instance, if market capitalization, earnings per share, return on assets, equity to total asset, long-term debt to total asset, short-term debt to total asset, debt to total asset, short-term debt to equity, and long-term debt to equity, as well as total debt to equity are my independent variables, I'll look at the relationship between them. Anyone that is above 80%, then it gives me the possibility of multicollinearity. For instance, the relationship between total debt to equity gives me 99%, indicating that there's a possibility for multicollinearity. That is for Spearman rank correlation, and this is the result. I also have, you can also test for correlation using the Pearson correlation. The command is CORR. Then you also drop your variables just like you did for the Spearman rank correlation. Drop your variables, you drop Tobin Q, market capitalization, earnings per share, and every other variable in your data set. When you finish dropping them, you can now click enter, and this is your result. This is your result. So you see that market capitalization maintains a positive relationship with Tobin Q. Earnings per share maintains a positive relationship with Tobin Q as well. Return on asset maintains a positive relationship with Tobin Q. However, equity to total asset has a negative relationship. Short-term debt to equity has a negative relationship, while others have positive relationship. So the difference between them is that in Spearman rank correlation, you observe that it was only equity to total asset that has a negative relationship. However, for the Pearson correlation, you find out that it is short-term debt to equity, long-term debt to equity, and total debt to equity that has negative relationship together with equity to total assets. This tells us that sometimes if you don't meet the assumptions and you rely on a particular estimator, your result could be spurious. Now, because my observation is less than 2000 and my data does not come from a normal distribution, if I go ahead to interpret my Pearson correlation, my result with respect to short-term debt to equity, long-term debt to equity, and total debt to equity may be spurious, may be misleading, because in the Spearman correlation, where my data set is, the observation of my data set is less than 2000 and my data does not come from a normal distribution, is telling me that short-term debt to equity has a positive relationship. So this ought to have been the correct technique to use, but so assuming I go ahead to use my Pearson correlation, even though the result will come out, my result will be misleading. So it is very important for you to first establish normality of your data before you now do your correlation analysis, to be able to know the type of technique to use between Spearman and the Pearson correlation. Now, supposing I want to stay with my Spearman correlation, then I want to export this my result to a Word document. What I can do, I copy this command that brought up the Spearman rank correlation result. I paste in the command window. I go to the beginning. I type asdoc and then replace at the end, comma, replace at the end. You type asdoc at the beginning of the command, and then at the end of the command, you put comma and then replace. Then you click enter. The asdoc program have a video that explain it better, and I will include the link in the comment section. Will help you to export. The asdoc program will help you to export your result into a nicely formatted Word document. So in this case, my asdoc program has helped me to export the Spearman result into a nicely formatted Word document, and it has named the document my file, just like you have here. So if I click on this my file, the Word document will come up where my result has been exported and it is nicely formatted, just like you can see here. This look very nice. So there you have it. In just a few steps, you are now able to carry out the Spearman rank relation in Stata or the Pearson correlation in Stata, depending on the outcome of your normality test. If this video was useful, please like, comment, share this video, and most importantly, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that when I upload another video like this, you will be the first to be notified. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.